Thank you for tuning in to the Mental Health Wealth Podcast. My name is Kee Ford, and I'm your host. Today, we have a special guest with us. Again, we have Brother Eric Gardner. As we always say, any information that we discuss here is not to diagnose yourself. Please seek additional help from a mental health professional or PCP in your local area. Now, we're back dealing with burnout. And so we had a very interesting discussion about burnout on our first episode. And it's something, as I stated, many people deal with it. It's something that is very easy to get into and very hard to avoid because of all the things that we face in this life. There's a lot of things, as Eric said before, vying for our attention. A lot of things pull us in different ways. And so we focused on it from a personal standpoint. But this time we want to kind of pivot a little bit and move on to burnout in our professional lives. Now, many of us work. Myself, I'm a therapist. I'm also, I guess just a therapist, I should say. I work with kids also in the school district doing therapy. A little bit of social work background, preacher. And when I think about all those things, and as I have said before, it deals with people. And sometimes when you deal with the public, it weighs on you heavy. I can remember speaking with a brother before, and he said to me, how do you avoid burnout working in the social work field when you see bad things happen to little children? I had to learn quickly to not wear it on my shoulder, because if you take things personally, man, you'll fight everything every time you see something wrong inside of the system. You will fight every time when there is a child who's mistreated. And I can even think in my private practice, I've only had one incident where I've had to call the authorities on an individual, a couple. A man wanted to hurt his wife actually in a therapy session. I will say this, after that session, it kind of made me just want to say, you know what, I'm done with people in this profession, because man, it you want to do so much to help, but sometimes it comes at a detriment to yourself. So Eric, I want to kick it to you, man. With the many hats that you wear on the professional side, man, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so for those that may not know, I am secularly I work as an assistant principal for a high school, and so there when you talk about kids and families who, and I've said this about the school system, public school system has become very much that which it was not meant to be. The school system now, when you look at public schools now, we are the home, we are the juvenile detention center, we are parents, to these kids. We are food banks. We are, Goodwill, clothing. Like at our school, man, we have clothes closet, we have a food closet, we have counseling sessions in our school for students who are dealing with mental trauma and things of that nature. And so the school has become all things, man. And in some regards, it's not good, because it's taken responsibility away from the home, and away from those who should be stepping up. But just like in your field, man, I see a lot of bad things every day. And for me, I have to see it as a ministry. I have to see it as me doing the work and will of God, and making sure that the place where I work, that I leave it better than I found it. And that's how I deal with it. When I consider Ephesians 6, Paul said, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart, as unto Christ, not with eye service, as men pleasers, but as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with goodwill, doing service as unto the Lord and not unto men. And so if I ever lose sight of that, and I start seeing people as just people and not as souls, and not as me doing the service of God, being a Christian, in very oftentimes an anti-God, place, location, then I will get sucked in, For me, I will get sucked into the negativity and to all of the bad that I see. And so for me, I have to view it as a ministry, knowing that I'm serving this place and bringing glory and honor to God, and Christ and the Spirit and the church, as I'm in this place. And that's my prayer, every morning before I go into my job. Lord, let everything that I think, say, and do in this place bring glory and honor to you, to your Son, to your Spirit, and to your church. That's a prayer that I pray every day before I walk into that place.
With you making the transition from the classroom to the administration side, what was the biggest change? Are there things when it comes to burnout that could you burn out easier in administration or as a teacher? No,
That's a good question. It's different, but the stresses and the pressures, like there's stress and pressure in each one.
Mm-hmm.
There's opportunity to burn out in each one, but it's just different. So I often compare it to this. So you remember when President Obama, before he took office, man, he looked young and vibrant and, hair was black and no wrinkles. And man, that first year, like within the first 2 years of his presidency, man, he had wrinkles and gray hair. And then, boy, that toll took, because he was privy to information he didn't have when he was a congressman or when he was just a politician. And that's the way I kind of view it when you move from the classroom into administration. You are privy to way more information that you can't, you're not at liberty to share because of HIPAA laws and things of that nature, and HERPA laws, but FERPA laws. But you have this access to this information that the teacher may not necessarily have, and so it goes deeper. And so you see more trauma, and you see more. You deal with kids who are abusing drugs and have terrible home lives, and they bring all that stuff to the school. And so, it falls on your plate at the end of the day. The teacher is just teaching. And so if a student is misbehaving in classroom, they're sent to the principal's office. Well, then that's when I learn all of the things that the teacher doesn't know. And so the burnout of seeing that each and every day. And then on top of that, man, when you're dealing with education, you're dealing with so many facets. You're dealing with state laws and federal funding and test scores and parents who are not supportive of the school and that are anti-school. And so they make your life hard. And you have, a society of students that are entitled, and so they have a disrespect for authority. And so all of these things can pile on to teachers. It's not, I'm not disclosing information here that you can't look up yourself. We have a teacher shortage.
Yeah.
We have a teacher shortage. And the reason is because of all of those things I just mentioned. It's hard. Being in education is hard. And so burning out, man, there are teachers leaving the profession in droves because of burnout. There are administrators leaving the profession in droves because of burnout.
I definitely believe that. And I have seen those lists from to Chattanooga to Murfreesboro to Nashville. I was actually told, and there was a school I was actually before I found my position with Health Connect doing therapy in the school system. I was looking to get into doing some therapy in school systems. Mm-hmm. And man, I was told that, hey, you just show up and say that you're a therapist, you prove your degree and everything. They was like, hey, you get a job. So they might give you a teaching job if you because it's such a need. And when you think about it in the professional life, professionals do things that they love to do. Mm-hmm. If I become burnt out from something I love to do, that means that something has had to change in it.
Right.
That means that there has been something that has made it less appealing. Mm-hmm. Because not only do we see burnout like in teachers, we can look at our state workers. I work closely with DCS, and I can't tell you, I'll start with a kid and I'll meet his DCS worker and then wait 2 months later. It's probably the third one that is coming 2 months because of burnout and the things that have happened in the professional world. Now, I will say this. I do believe that COVID has played a big role in that. Sure. COVID happened, but before that with teachers. Now I'm gonna make a a personal statement, I should say an opinion. Teachers have always been underpaid.
Oh, for sure, for
Like,
sure, man. When you correlate a teacher's education, right, their higher education, and if you took that and you correlated it to the business world, like teachers would be making $100,000 a year, man. You know what I'm saying? Like easy. And people think teachers have their classrooms are overcrowded. At the high school level, teachers could have 30 something, 37, 38 kids in the classroom, man. And so all this responsibility for the teacher. And then not on top of that, the teacher is responsible for making sure that each one of these students progresses academically, and that they have learning gains and not learning losses, because if they have learning losses, then that goes against the teacher. The teacher doesn't control what happens at that student's house. The teacher doesn't control who that student was born to. They don't control if that student has support at home, but yet they're held accountable for making sure their student learns. Now, that student can come to class and sleep every day,
And
so
it reflects on the teacher.
right, and it reflects on the teacher. So teachers are not paid, and people think, oh, you only work 9 months a year. Well, I'm unemployed for 3.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'm technically unemployed for 3 months. So if you annualize my salary, if you cut up my salary over 12 months, it's not, it doesn't equal what people think it does.
Yeah, I agree. I say it like this: if you look at the cost of daycare and how much you would pay for sending a child to daycare and how much daycare can make, and teachers are given the task of teaching our youth who are going to go up and grow up and go into the world, why isn't it that we focus more on that?
Right.
If we're gonna do those things, and it always shocks me, and it doesn't. I should say it doesn't shock me, and it doesn't surprise me that the revolving door of teachers. Now you have some diehard educators like yourself, some who I know who gonna stick with it because they love what they do. But man, it becomes a task again when the deck is stacked against you.
Yeah.
Man, it takes your love out of it, and you don't want to abandon the kids.
And these teachers, man, I know teachers who have, because of burnout, they have lost their passion for students. And no teacher that I know got into education to be rich.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like
You just don't.
you don't go into education to be rich. Like you don't go in to make money. Of course, you want to be able to provide for your family and to have a good life, but no educator got into education to be rich. But that doesn't mean that just because you didn't get into it to be rich, that you don't understand that you need money to live and survive, and that you need to be paid a fair wage for what you do in your educational level. And so there is a lot of burnout because of that. And we love what we do, but very often the deck is stacked against teachers. And teachers are some of the most, they are the superheroes of our communities, man. Like by far and large, that they are superheroes of our community. But professionally, they get attacked. They get attacked from politicians. They get attacked from people who never step foot in a classroom. Like they've never been in that position. And what one thing that happened, you mentioned COVID. One thing that happened with COVID, man, we had so many parents that contacted the school during COVID and was like, we get it now. When schools were shut down and they were having to educate their kids from home, and they had to help in the education process of their children because their children had to learn virtually.
Yeah.
Man, these parents were writing in and calling into the school like, we're sorry. Thank you. We get it. Like y'all's job is like, I have one child that I've done this for, and y'all do it for 37 every day. I'm saying 37 per class. So if you think teachers, let's say they're on a block schedule where you have 4 blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They teach 3 and they have 1 for their planning. They have 1 off so that they can plan. Then you take 37 times 3.
Yep,
it's over 100 students a day, man.
100, that's 112 right there.
Yeah.
I mean 121,
Yeah.
111. Look, my math ain't mathing right now.
Yeah. So you have that over 100 students per day, that you are responsible for. And these parents have 2.
Yeah, grades, lesson plans,
right?
Parent teacher conferences
Yeah.
go on,
Testing, and then they have to do They have to do duties, while bus duty, car duty, hall duty, lunch duty, they need to support games. They have continuing education to keep their license renewed, have to keep their license renewed. So they have to put in so many hours outside of the school day in order to keep their, all of this like teachers go through. And then people think that, oh, they anybody can be a teacher. And that's what the profession has come to. And so it can be very taxing in education, and and they can get professionally burnt out. And you can see it, and it's coming to a head because teacher shortages are happening all over the country, to the extent that many school systems are considering a 4-day school week.
Man,
like many school systems, like several up north, have gone to a 4-day school week because they're like, man, that's more attractive for teachers. We need more teachers. That's more attractive. It's just like, man, we just tired of dealing with students for 5 days because the lack of respect from students is unprecedented now. It's just, and that's another reason why private schools are exploding with enrollment. Like parents are shifting their students out of public school, going to private because you have smaller classrooms, behavior is not where it needs to be. You're not held under the standard from a state perspective because states and the federal government doesn't fund private education, so they can't tell them what to do. And you have all of these social agendas that are pushed in public education, and you can't push those at private schools because you don't give us money, so we don't have to let a boy participate in a girl sport.
Yeah.
Right. So all of this can cause burnout based on what your spiritual views are, what your moral views are, all you can come in contact with a lot of these things. So for me, when people ask me, man, you're a preacher, you're a Christian, how do you do it in public education? Because again, I have to see it as a ministry. I have to see it as this is God, and my life belongs to God. And then everything else is a prong under that. I can't say, oh, here's family, here's work, here's extracurricular, and then here's God. Like I can't compartmentalize that way, because if I do, it will be disastrous. So what I say is, oh, God is the umbrella, and everything else, families under there, jobs under there, extracurriculars under there, churches under there. And everything that I do in those areas brings glory to him. So that's the way I have to view it.
I like that picture. And then also to say, to avoid to burn out in those situations, we need to make sure we pick jobs. Like if we are going to be Christians, or we want to make sure that we want to be giving God our best, get into a field where you can do that. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I wouldn't take a certain job that's going to take me away from doing God's will. That's the reason I chose to get into counseling. I'll never forget it. Jerry Martin is the person who actually got me into the counseling field. I don't know if you know Brother Martin. He used to teach at Memphis School of Preaching. He was over the counseling department at Amherst University, where I attended. I met Brother Martin at PTP. And I said, man, he met me. He said, man, you're a preacher, and you're very, very nice to people, and you can communicate with people. He said, you ever thought about being a therapist? I said, man, I don't want to be no therapist. Man, get out of here. So he was like, man, just go to Amherst for a semester. So I went to Amherst after I left Memphis in 2016. So 2016 to 2017, I finished up my bachelor's in human development. Just so happened I finished up my bachelor's. I meet Brother Martin again, PTP. Hey, man, I finished up my bachelor's. Man, you ever thought about being a counselor? Man, I told you last time I'm not going to be a counselor. Guess what happened? I enrolled in the program. Probably one of the best moves that I've made professional wise, I should say, get into that field, because he said, you've already been to Memphis, you're versed in the Bible, you know how to do the scriptures. Get something that's going to be outside of the scriptures where you can bring God more glory. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I turtled my way through it. It took me 3 years to do my master's, when normally could have been done in 2, but man, working, preaching, family, life, everything that's going on, I wasn't able to take 3 3 and 4 classes every time. And so I did mine with 2, and luckily, well, I don't want to say luck didn't have anything to do with it, but by God's grace, I was able to come through it, and I made it because I got to the point where I burnt out my last assignment that was between me and my master's degree is when we had the house fire. I had one paper that almost stopped me from graduating because I was so burnt out. Every time I sat in front of the computer, I could not type anything. I couldn't even do notes for work because I was just so out of it after that. And got myself back together, boom, knocked it out, and here I stand now. You know, Anybody who's going to do a person needs to make sure the profession is something that can be utilized, something that they like. You don't want to do anything that's grudgingly. I know a lot of people who work in fast food. I hear people say the same thing every time. Man, you never want to work in fast food. It's the worst profession ever. Well, it depends on what you make of it. If I go into it with a bad attitude and I'm just doing it for, I'm just mad at the world because I got to do this job. Well, are you being compensated?
Right.
If I had to work in fast food, I'm going Chick-fil-A. I'm gonna go to Chick-fil-A.
Off on Sundays.
Look, they already. So look, I know that I don't have to worry about anything. On Sunday, when Sunday comes, I'm gonna be able to go to worship on Sunday, and they pay you a fairly decent rate.
Right.
So when we think about it in a professional standpoint, to avoid burnout, one has to make sure that they make the proper choice. A lot of times we pray for jobs, and then I should say this: no, we take jobs and then pray that God make it work. No, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Right.
We need to pray before we get into the situations and be mindful of the professions that we choose as those who are going to be bringing God the glory.
We talked in a previous episode about being prepared, and in our professional lives, that preparation is what allows us to have more ownership in where and how we work. You talking about your master's and going through that, man. And I remember my last degree. My wife was like, "No more school." I mean, I have 5 pieces of paper.
Look, my wife has already told me, you better not be trying to be like Eric. I said, I'm gonna go be a psychologist. She said, "No more school." So my wife has already told me.
Yeah, look, I told my wife, "No more." Yes, baby, I know you're right. No more, because I know my oldest daughter. I spent a considerable portion of her life in school. Mm-hmm. And but at least I set that example for her. I set that example for her. So my oldest daughter would never be able to say, "Well, I never had an example of continuing education or further my education." But I was like you, man. I did my doctorate in 3 years. And it got to a point where I was burning out, and I was like, I don't know. I was telling my wife, I don't know if I can do this. This is academically probably the heaviest thing I've ever done in my life. And I didn't know if I would do it, but I knew I was like, I wanted to quit, but I knew I wasn't going to quit because I know me. But I did also understand that if I did this, I could make more money and lessen my job load. You know what I'm saying? I could, and then I could dictate how and where I went and what I did, and it would open up more doors for me professionally. So I made that investment earlier on to try to, get out from under having to work so much and so hard, and so I feel like if I put in the stress on the front end, that I could take a lot of it off and on the back end. So that's kind of what, that was kind of my thoughts about doing, getting an advanced degree. But one thing, I want to bring up too, and I don't think we brought this up in a previous episode, is that burnout, man, is good. It's good to have people that you can talk to, even if you don't go to a professional counselor or do professional therapy, being able to have people that you can talk to and confide in and just vent, just be able to talk to and release some of that stress. I think that's very important, when we're dealing with burnout.
You are absolutely right about that, because everyone needs a sounding board. Everybody has things they need to process. And sometimes it's good to have those in that same field, because there are certain things that an educator is only going to be able to share with an educator. Right. From that standpoint.
Right.
Therapists, preachers, and you name it. It's because everybody in those professions go through different things. and sometimes teeter-tottering with the ideal of just saying, man, maybe I need to try something new because this happened. But then you have that person who can say, you know what, this I've been through this, you can make it. I've seen the same things that you've seen. You know what, this will pass. You know, it's only a moment.
Right.
You can get through it. You know, I've talked to a lot of people from the Department of Children's Services, and like I said on our previous episode, the turnover rate is so bad. In one of the counties here in Tennessee, they lost actually all of their workers. They had to have workers come from another area to come and cover this particular area because of burnout, because they were so swamped with work, and they couldn't get what they needed to take care of the kids. You know, that's tough, man, and I can see that wearing thin on somebody. But when it comes to that burnout professionally, seek the help. You know, reach out. Be prepared also, and make sure again in your profession, because it can happen. Look at entertainers. Even entertainers go through it. We may say, man, we want the entertainer life. But guess what? They get burnt out too. You know, and we see people who may appear to be happy. You think about somebody like a Robin Williams.
I know.
You know, who was funny guy, but you know, ended his life. Still don't know the why. But again, none of us are exempt from burnout. It can happen to any of us.
Absolutely.
You know, I think about, I want to, what was his name? You know, you gave me a thought I should say when it came about teaching. I want to share this before we get ready to conclude this episode. You know, I was actually supposed to be a teacher. When I left, I graduated from East Mississippi Community College in 2007. I went to MUW, and I was going to be a biology teacher. And I'll never forget it, man. I had this guy, his name was Dr. Afatile. He was from Africa. And he had an 8 o'clock class, and I'll never show up, but I passed all the tests. And he would say, oh, Mr. Ford, you never here, but you passed my tests. Man, I was always laughing at this dude. He was like the coolest dude ever. I did all the classes, man. I did the organic chemistries. I'm talking about labs. I made it 1 year, one more semester, and I'd have been done. But then I was so burnt out by the time I made it through it. Like, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher, man, because all this, and then think about all the stuff that you said, the continued education, all this stuff. I didn't even think about those things. So educating, preparing yourself about these situations that you're going to get into can help you pick a better choice of a career.
Sure.
So definitely got to keep that in mind. And I hope it's something that we've said here today, because Eric has definitely given me some nuggets to think about. So burnout, we're trying to deal with it. Join us next time for the last episode. Anything we talk about on this podcast is for your knowledge. This is not information that I'm not diagnosing anyone, but I hope that the conversation opens up to where, again, we can all seek to improve our own mental health.